It's time for breaking bread with Papa. Hey, don't you know? Hey, it's our goal. Hey, it's time for breaking bread with Papa. Hey, don't you know? Hey, it's also a show.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to another edition of Breaking Bread with Tom Papa. I'm Tom Papa. Thank you so much for coming along for another exciting episode. This is going to be a good one. If you love pizza and you love all good things, Chris Bianco is on with us. Legendary chef, pizza maker out of Phoenix, Arizona, originally from the Bronx. So much to get into. It's incredible how deep we can go. We could do a whole Breaking Bread season just with Chris. Thank you all so much for listening. Thank you for subscribing. Thank you so much for spreading the word as we continue to grow this beautiful family of ours. Thank you for going on and giving us a little stars when you like things, giving us nice comments, spreading the word. Of course, subscribing audio or going on YouTube and subscribing there. It all helps spread the word and give everybody a good heads up on what we've already started. I apologize that these recent episodes have been making you hungry. I've gotten a lot of friendly complaints that they have been driven to drink more wine, eat more cheese, get more bread. And I've had a couple of friends actually say that they listen to this podcast while they're cooking, which is always a great thing. That's a great sign for me. And I am with you. I listen to these when we have all these great chefs and all these great people and all these great stories from comedians about what they eat and love. It makes me hungry as well. And I don't get through any of these without going off my good, thoughtful diet and just eating like a maniac as soon as we finish the interview. So we're all in this together. And you know what? Good for us. We should be eating our faces off. It's a short, crazy life, and we should be stuffing our faces with anything that brings us joy whenever we can. Chris Bianco, I met him first when I was performing with Jerry Seinfeld in Arizona, and we went to Chris's Pizzeria restaurant, and it was pretty mind-blowing to see in the middle of this desert community, there was this Italian guy cranking out pizzas from this wood-burning oven that were the best that I had ever had in my life. And growing up in New Jersey and New York, that's saying a lot. And when we met Chris, you just saw that this is more than just somebody who's trying to open a good restaurant. This is truly an artist, somebody who's very thoughtful and very centered, not just about the end product, but the whole experience and the whole career and his whole life. And this interview will show you that. This is somebody who's very, very much in tune with not just his career, but life in general. And it comes through. And I think that truly is his secret. I think when people get really good at small things, they become very big things. And Chris Bianco is one of them. And I'm happy to say this is, I think, the third time we've met, and I'm quickly going to become friends with him. And when the pandemic's over, I'm going to move to Arizona and live in his restaurant right underneath the wood-burning oven. So enjoy it, everybody. This is a great conversation. It took place in his restaurant during the day. There's a little ambient noise. It gets a little wonky at times. Hang in there. It's worth it. I'll do my best to make sure that you can hear it clearly. But this is a live, in the moment situation. So it's a little cacophonous at points. But all in all, I think it's worth it. Thank you again. And now, break bread with Chris Bianco.
Yeah, that sounds good.
Yeah, good to see you. Thanks for coming on.
Oh no, it's my pleasure. It's just it's good to connect somehow in humanity right now in this kind of standoff we're in.
I know.
Hopefully
we'll muddle out of it. Well, I'll start off by just showing this. I know I sent you a little picture of it in the email, but during the pandemic, I changed the artwork in my house.
Yes, I love it. Oh my God, that is quite the honor. I am honored to be there.
I got
That's very cool.
I saw online you had posted that this is like I guess probably the darkest part of the quarantine, when we were kind of panicked and shutting our doors, and there was a Bianco di Napoli poster for sale. I was like, oh man, I'm getting that immediately, because I had just actually discovered.
Hopefully it brought some good light into the room.
Yeah, it's so
hopefully
good.
Hopefully it brought some good light.
Yeah, so we got it framed and we put it in the dining room where we eat every night. So
oh my God, that's crazy. Well, I'm very honored. My dad, who painted, will be very honored, and I appreciate that very, very much.
No, it's so great. It really kind of like, these moments during this weirdness that have been kind of great was, I've always been cooking a lot, and I started to just kind of focus in on tomatoes. And I was, it's always Italian cooking. We're Italians from New Jersey. And I was like, I'm always sitting there with crushed and pureed and whole tomatoes and the different brands.
Think about these tomatoes.
Yeah, there's a lot to get into. So I'm going to get back to that, but I want to just start off going off on the journey. But
I'm very grateful. That's very kind.
Yeah, we're going to definitely get into it. So good to see you. And last night I was just kind of, getting ready for the interview and going through some stuff. And I had opened up a bottle of red wine and it wasn't good. And listening to you talk and read interviews, you have such a good way of telling people that they should really appreciate the goodness of things and that the quality of things, and actually just be a little more thoughtful. And that ended up with me pouring the bottle of the wine down the drain.
Well, you know what? Without that reference for, I guess, pain, there'd be no pleasure at all, And Lord knows we had enough of it right now. We are well versed in the reference of pain for sure this year. But it is, sometimes I think about wine. My last name being Bianco. It's funny. My Uncle Louis, my grandfather's youngest brother, he made wine. They all moved upstate New York. We're from the Bronx. They all moved Pine Bush, New York, up in the Catskills.
Right.
And my grandfather bought 3 acres with two of his brothers, and they built houses about, it was 3 acres. They had houses about 50 yards apart, so they felt like they were back in the Bronx.
Yeah.
But in my grandfather's basement, there was always my Uncle Louis made wine, and it was called a Bianco Red, and it was the worst probably wine I've ever tasted, but ironically, he made fantastic vinegar. I guess there's always an upside. I guess it's finding, it's kind of like, it's like managing people, I guess, in a way, if that's the thing, which, it's finding our place. Bad wine, maybe good vinegar. The worst waiter might make the best line cook, or vice versa. But it's all the, we struggle our whole life for finding our place, I think. And there's a lot of metaphors lurking out there to kind of keep us in line for sure.
Yeah.
To show us the way, I suspect.
Yeah. So when your father and brothers, were they born here or did they come over?
Yeah, my parents were born here. My grandparents from Italy, they came very, very young. We're mostly, just Italian Americans.
Right.
Hold on. I lost half you. Don't hold on. We're there. I'm up there.
There you go.
I got you.
Nice.
But yeah, it's very specific, I think, being a New York Italian, where I thought I knew about Italy until I went back, and I remember being a kid, and you're 13 and you're from New York, you kind of know everything, you think. And I remember going, and my great aunt lived in Rome, and I remember going down like with my father to have a coffee, and I didn't have a coffee, but I remember when the espresso came, I was like, what's the deal? There's no lemon peel on this thing. Like, what kind of espresso is this?
Yeah.
Like in New York, as a kid, you'd have a demi-tasse with an orange peel,
Yeah.
at the local Italian restaurant to kind of like the scene of Moonstruck, the restaurant there.
Yeah.
And then you kind of learn this, even in that kind of that humbling lesson that maybe the lemon isn't really the authentic way. How an immigrant's journey kind of adjusts even the smallest pleasures, like coffee. Like, for instance, I guess the turn of the century, the Italians couldn't get when they, in the Lower East Side, they couldn't get the bitterness that they had in their espresso.
Yeah.
They would run their rim on their little kind of cafeterias, little, still pot coffee that they would make, and they'd run the rim with a little lemon peel to create that bitterness. And I thought it was, it goes back to, the next thing I invented will be the first thing. There's always something that comes from a situation that's linked to another situation. And here we are,
Yeah.
But,
yeah. It's an amazing thing we met once before, by the way, or twice actually. Yep. I came in with Seinfeld once. He turned me on to your place the first time. Oh, you remember? And then
I do.
There was a great moment. I don't know if you remember this part of the story. We were sitting there eating. We had a show to do that night, and you were very successful. It was hard to get in, and some very big agent was outside in his black SUV or whatever, and they were trying to get in. And they were throwing names around, and you came over to the table, and you're like, "I don't know. Do I let this guy in?" And Jerry was like, "Nah." Yeah. And you're like, "Yeah, he can wait." I was like, "This is a great place."
It's funny though. I had a lot of, our original place, a tiny little place, 40 seats, and I had a lot of over the years, people would, most people were very kind, and I'm very grateful for that, but. Once in a while, a few beers in or whatever, I bump into someone and says, "You son of a bitch, you made me wait for 3 hours." And I was like, listen, dude, the last thing I wanted to do was I wanted to take your money so fast. I wanted to take it now. So the pain you felt in the 3 hours, the pain I felt not being able to seat you, but we're a Dixie cup, and you can't really put a gallon of water in it. And, sometimes it's hard for people to see that. Just like your sold out shows, it's hard. There's only so many seats in the house.
Yeah, you're used to, in LA, you're always used to be able to throw your weight around and get what you want. It was like, no, there's some integrity to this place.
Yeah, I know. There's a little bit, we have a little bit. I try to do what I can, I think, I try to look out for, all my friends and my extended family.
Yeah.
But sometimes, and it's hard because, people, especially now, I would say, are easily offended. And and it's an interesting, a lot of interesting dynamics in the restaurant business. I was always jealous of my dad, in 94 still, or 93 now. But, he's a painter, portrait painter. He'd do a painting or he'd do that tomato can. Yeah. And he lets it go, and the world can confirm or deny its significance. With us, 300 times a night, we're getting how many rotten tomatoes do we get, and then you got to do it the next day and the next day. So it's not like a film or a piece of art.
Yeah.
It's something utilitarian, very malleable to the experience or to a person's impression or to the weather or fucking news or whatever, it's everything's under the influence. So, there was always a reason I never put reviews up in a restaurant. I never, I don't really believe in anything singular best. I think that, we try to be, there's a lot of places in my life that I think are amazing. Yeah. I've been blessed to eat a lot of great food and on different spectrums of fancy or someone's grandma's kitchen. And I look at it kind of like, whatever your spirituality is or anyone, most eternity is based on some type of collective, It's not really a singular island. And I think that's more when we grow up, we want to be the best baseball player, the best, and then you figure out, well, what the fuck is that? That's not even any fun. So
right.
you look for the identity of being, if you're a comedian, what could be better than being, mentioned, with others that inspire you or you respect. And I think that's one thing that, like in my business, it's not that I don't care what my grandmother thinks I do, but it's very much, in talking to different comedians or musicians, I think there's a lot of parallels of the respect of your peers,
Yeah.
is kind of everything. Like, the audience can say, oh, God, it's funny. It's like, yeah, they stole my fucking joke, whatever, it's not that funny. Or like, oh, did you see that movie about Hendrix? It was unbelievable. It was the best movie by Hendrix. And you go, yeah, but the guy played right-handed, and then all of a sudden, like, the lack of attention to detail left something to be desired, for the purists or for the ones that understand the struggle. So I think there's something, I think there's something to see in most things.
Yeah, there has to be. It's an interesting thing, especially for what you do, in that you are concentrated on doing the thing that you do as well as you possibly can to make these pizzas as great as possible, to like just focus in on that and put all your heart into it. And for you have in your head, what is a great pizza? What am I striving for? But then you have all of these people showing up and putting all their influence in it and asking for it. It seems to me that you've maintained a truth to yourself while also being in a business that has to serve all these people.
Well, I'll tell you, that is very kind words. I'm appreciative of it. I like to think that I try to keep my integrity. It's like people say, can I ask you a personal question? I mean, they're all personal questions. Right. There's no separation of work and play. I don't fucking, so I think the integrity part, it wasn't like I had to go to work and have to be this thing or have to be, like I remember there was, I forgot, like Father Knows Best or something, the book, the movie on TV show in the 50s. And allegedly, I guess, his family wrote a not so flattering book about him. But America thinks he's a great, maybe some parallels in politics right now, but we won't get into that. But so it's more about as the people that are around you see you, your family and your friends. And, I just thought that when I opened up in '88, I remember a lot of my relatives saying, Chris, you know how many pizzerias there are, and there's Domino's and there's this and, the independence and the thing. And I was like, I want to understand my slice of the pie, my audience. Right. I did my best to, I knew who I was with all my dysfunction and how much of my weekly salary I could spend on food. And I try to, on a napkin, calculate how many of me could there be, and how many more could I possibly be. And I tried to the best that I did serve my audience, which is not that everybody else is welcome to that. I guess it is, not because you're a business, but I think there is a lot of parallels in whether it's comedy or music that, you want to give an audience, I think the worst thing that can happen in a film, a comedy show or dinner, the parallels would be when they leave, they go, not what I expected. Right. Most times. And I think because very rarely is not what I expected. Not that you can't be surprised and be well, but I would say in the 85 percentile that they're not what I expected. You went for an action thriller, and you got, a love story,
right. Drama.
You went for Jim Gaffigan and you got, Lenny Bruce, whatever,
right.
Even though I think Jim Gaffigan swore the other day, I guess, but anyway, I think so understanding what your audience expects from you, exceeding that expectation, bringing wrinkles of evolution, which we try to do, even through flower varietals or organic growing, or how can we make things better, but not losing, I think, your audience along the way. I think, giving, it's like my parents, my fucking parents are crazy. They've been married 60 years. My dad's 93, my mom's 80. They're amazingly imperfect human beings.
Right.
And I'm blessed to live long enough to see them as human beings and not my parents, which I really think is one of the great blessings of life.
Yeah.
You just like, oh my God, how'd you do that to me? And when you did this, you're like, holy shit, what a struggle to bring kids to the, the 60s of Vietnam, the 70s, the struggle, whether it's, JFK, Martin Luther King, Bobby Kennedy, bringing your kids through that. Well, obviously we have our own challenges now, but I'm saying when you look back and also you look at, the challenges that were there in New York City, whether it was, drug scenes of the 70s and 80s and, other things that, can take us off, But when I was young, when we left the Bronx, I moved to a little town called Austin, New York, up to Westchester County. It's on the other side of the Tappan Zee Bridge, right next to Sleepy Hollow, beautiful Tarrytown, all that up there. And it's a beautiful part of the world, but it's 22 miles, I think, from the city, but it's like 22 million miles away in a way. And
how old were you?
Even like those moves, I was like in first grade, kindergarten, we're so very young, And but it was really, it felt like we were moving to the moon. I remember like we lived downstairs. My Aunt Margie lived, or we lived upstairs. My Aunt Margie lived downstairs on Bainbridge Avenue in the Bronx. And I remember leaving that day, and the tears, and like we were driving away in a covered wagon to the great timbers of beyond. And it was
into the woods.
25 minutes up the Taconic, But it was the world away, I think, and it really helped shape me in my life a lot of being a visitor. I think I'm very safe in the visitor role. Even though I was born in New York City, I was born in Mount Sinai in Manhattan, go to the Bronx, end up in Ossining, make my way to Phoenix somehow. But I've always felt very safe as a visitor, like not claiming something. And I think New York is perfect foil for that or place for that, because it doesn't need you. And I'm very appreciative of that. Right. It's like, if you're dead, we got a guy for your place. The sidewalk is moving, and jump on or jump off, but there's no time to ponder. And I think that it was very helpful to me, like when I traveled anywhere, to always be the visitor, and that was easy. But when I finally made roots, whether it was in Arizona, or I was back in Arizona, and I remember my grandfather was a New York City fireman at Hook and Ladder 17 in the Bronx. That's when my dad met my mom. My dad lived across the street from the firehouse, and there's a beautiful love story. We'll throw that in there. But I remember he was such a sweetheart of a guy, and I remember, he was such a, no matter who you were walking down the street, you'd look somebody in the eye, you'd say, good morning, good afternoon, whatever the fuck it was. Right. He was adamant about that. And I remember things changing. I remember in the 70s where my mom, who worked in the city, she worked in Saks Avenue for many years. And I remember people go, oh, make sure you put your bag over by your side, and to be safe and all these things and whatever. And my grandfather, was always said, I would see when the out of towners come, they grip everything tighter, and it makes people want to take it away more. If you just say, you can fucking have it if you want it, but it ain't worth it, really, Anyway, bad analogy, or not very thorough analogy, but I think there was a lot of people growing up that grew up in New York that didn't know you didn't have to be that hard. We cried like everybody else. Every neighborhood was its own world. Right. People were vastly different, but eerily the same. And I think all that experience has just helped me, and continues to help me grow within a structure of being a visitor, which we all are.
It's interesting because when you say that, because I had heard about you and this legendary pizza, and it's the best in the country, and you've got to see where is in Phoenix, Arizona. I was like, what? Arizona. And then meeting you, it was like, no, this guy belongs in the Bronx. So it does make sense that you were that comfortable outsider.
Well, I think what's the other thing is I'm very kind of maniacal about. We're actually moving one of our restaurants today. It's a very long story. I won't put you through, but we had a little restaurant, a trattoria, white tablecloth restaurant called Trado. And with the pandemic, it was only 1,000 square feet. We have to move it to a larger location just to create some social distancing. Right. So I closed a second location of a bakery I had. We're moving over there. We're opening up Friday. But in all this kind of, whether it's pizza or pasta or whatever, I've always been maniacal about the experience, whether it's, the painting that's behind you or the lighting. I was always on a low budget or no budget. So I was always on, back in the day it was Penny Saver, now it's Craigslist or OfferUp to find, other people's tarnished treasures, that we can find a place for, our friends' art that means something.
Yeah. And
I think there's, there was something about coming to Arizona. I'm going to connect the dots now of that story. Yeah. Coming to Arizona was a guy which I think I had a great advantage of your expectations initially were so low in 1988.
Yeah.
And I always think it's better know nothing than think you know something. And when back in 88, people didn't really pretend to know anything.
Right.
Well, growing up in New York, everybody knew fucking everything. Everybody knew everything about everything.
Yeah.
Yeah,
everybody.
Which is, it's entertaining and I enjoy it. And it's, and if they believe it's their truth and I never argue, with them, it's super cool. But there's something, I look at Marfa, Texas in that way of, like, if you could put something in a place, like, I don't really like eating blindfolded. I think, like, if we're not blind, who are we kidding? We're kidding ourselves.
Yeah.
And maybe we change our taste buds if we had to look at it. So I want the whole tactile experience if we're blessed with that.
Yeah.
But I think there's something about, when people come to Phoenix, and today it's a beautiful day. It's 70 degrees. It's beautiful out. And, it's really pretty magical. And it's hot as hell in the summer and it's terrible. But right now it's a magical place. And what it did for me was I felt that if I could create something, like I always think, like, I think if I had the antidote to the pandemic right now, let's just say, wouldn't that be fun?
That'd be great.
That'd be great. But if I had it and I was incapable to deliver it, it would be useless. I couldn't, I was locked in a vault. I had no needles, pills, nobody will do it. So we had this answer, but we had no way. I think very much I see the world in that way of no matter what I have, if I render you incapable to receive it, like a joke, if it's too fucking loud, if everybody at the bar is talking, my mic's not on, whatever. I'm not, I'm going through something I can't. Creating experience for someone and not, what do you mean it wasn't good? But then you looked at the lighting, it was bright. And the windows were open and it was freezing cold, or it was hot as hell, or whatever it was. The waiter's an asshole, or, anything that happened. Sorry, I was talking my waiter. But not you. But I think so. All that collective of the everything matters is kind of this would be another bad analogy, but you look at a plane, God forbid there's a crash and you hear like a pigeon took it down and flew into the turbine, and like a pigeon.
Yeah.
A fucking city pigeon could take down. They couldn't figure out a screen or something.
That one little thing.
That one little thing can take it all down. So I think my life, whether it's a pizza, I'm always like, what can get in our way? Like when I flip the sign, we're open. What's in our way?
Right.
Someone at the door. The guy at the door is an asshole. That can get in our way. No place to park. That's going to get away from my experience. So the more we can chip away bad, the more that we can kind of have the experience and kind of put you on the safe track so you can receive it. To be honest, to give your honest, kind of affected outside source opinion is the opportunity. And I think if there was anything that was our greatest fortune or whatever the word is, luck, was that we worked hard that you feel that, so you could see whatever you felt, for good or indifferent, that you were there to have it, and it was your experience. There wasn't a picture of me and, Abbott and Costello on the wall when they came, or Sinatra, or all these kind of other people's experiences. Like, all that matters, if you think I suck, that's all there is.
Yeah, now. But how much of the balance is the food and the ambiance experience, table, walls, all of that? Could you calibrate?
Well, I think here's the thing. I know I'm at a time in my life, I don't give a shit how good your food is. If people are ungrateful to give it to you, or it comes from a source that is, if it comes from a source that's supporting, migrant workers that aren't getting paid a livable wage, or whatever it is, like a lot of, I'd say my own family, who I love dearly, we grew up, I don't want to know. Don't look in Chrissy's sock drawer, because, whatever might have been found in 1978, I don't want to know.
No.
As long as he goes to school.
Don't dig too deep.
Don't dig too deep. But I think we're now in a place where we do want to know. Like, I got 3 kids now. I remember, later in my life, and my wife who saved my life from a lot of things, now I look back and I just think, what could I actually, if anything, share with them?
So do you think that, so if I'm understanding you correctly, it's the food and the place is kind of all just an extension of you.
It is. It all is an extension. I mean, I think that you get somewhere, I think if we took a survey, if we believed every freaking survey, we'd be in a perfect world. I think people aren't as conscious as they think about what annoys the shit out of them,
Yeah.
It's like a lot of times, people sometimes go on vacation and hope they have a miserable time so they don't have to go back again. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Oh my God, I remember, I won't say this about some people, man. Like, I remember, when one of the trips to Italy, when I was a kid, we took a bus with a bunch of tourists. And I met a lot of New Yorkers. Like, where do we got to go here? It looks just like we got the same thing. I wouldn't have to come flying. We got the same thing over there. And, it's a lot of that kind of growing up. But, sometimes if you keep looking, you'll see something that will astound you or inspire you, move you, or repel you from wanting to engage with it.
So when you were when you were growing up and you're in Ossining, I know you worked in a little pizza place.
I did, Aldo's Pizza.
But was there also cooking at home? Where was the exposure?
That's an interesting question, because the job I had at a pizzeria when I was 13 years old, after school, I go to Aldo's Pizza. And long gone now, but carrying the flour, up the stairs from the basement, I got to grind the mozzarella, big block of it. We all use the same, in New York, it was, different today, but, back then there was a lot of families that would bring a lot of pizzerias, all their ingredients.
Right.
And it was all the same stuff.
Yeah, and
but on the boxes, it was interesting, and this is another lesson for me, which was, first of all, we never asked any questions in my family. But like on our pizza box, it came with the rest of the stuff, and everybody else's boxes, it said, "You tried the rest, now try the best." And I'm like, I think I saw that box down the block. Like,
right.
I don't know what's going on. Yeah, who got the best? And then like, if you can add something, to that as you go on, and you, like, even my kids now. Yeah. I want them to hopefully best their ability to, recognize good and evil. But as far as the best, I would say the best anything is the anything you like the best.
Right. Yeah.
So it doesn't matter. So if you are now empowered to say, this is my favorite band, like the best, knowing that's I can now free myself from that fucking gorilla on my back. And I can all I have to worry about is what I dig. I got my own refrigerator now, my own freezer. I even got a pantry. I can put the shit in that I like. I can drink the wine that I want to drink. It's very empowering. you know, and I think it's a good way to live, you know.
Yeah.
And
Well, it's a thoughtfulness. It's a paying attention. Like I think when I was younger, you just kind of ate and you just kind of like devoured, and it was almost like mindless. You were just so filled with energy, you're just putting fuel in you, and you liked some things, and you know your family gave you food, whatever. But I think as you get older, you kind of just keep your eyes open a little bit more, and it's just being thoughtful about what you're doing, what you're drinking, what you're eating. That makes it helps the search for better stuff, I think.
Well, I think you know, yes, and I think it also starts. Like, it's funny, my parents, you know, they're a juxtaposition of not good and evil. I mean, they're both super great, awesome. But my dad was always like, "What's the big deal?" And my mom was like, "Oh my God, what a big deal!" Like, everything was a big deal. You know, this is the biggest deal. I remember, like, this is no bullshit. I must have been 5 years old. I remember being in the basement, and I remember there was like a half gallon of Breyer's ice cream. And I had a quart of Mott's applesauce. And I remember I had a bowl, and I said, what if I take this applesauce and I mix it with this vanilla ice cream? And I remember I swirled it up, and I ate it, and I was like, this is fucking delicious. And I remember upstairs to my mother. She eats. She's like, oh my God, Chrissy, that's fantastic. That's so good. And she looked at my father. She's like, hey, take this, your son. He makes the applesauce. He's like, it's all melty. You know, that was the kind of the whole thing, which is like, it's like too much and not enough. Right, you know, and it worked out good. I think you need that, you know, a little bit. But my mom was on the fashion side. She's an illustrator, but she also she designed wedding veils for Saks in New York for a long time. And,
was she a cook?
A lot of years in the bridal department.
Could she cook?
She still is. You know, she's an amazing cook. I mean,
oh yeah,
like fucking fantastic cook. And my grandmother too. My Aunt Margie, my aunts, they're all great cooks. And there's one thing though that I think that there wasn't any like, here's lessons of cooking. You want to be a chef. It was all kind of omnipresent. So,
right.
You know, there was always food in our house. Somebody died, there's food. Somebody had a baby, there's a bundt cake. You know, bundt cakes were hot in the mid-70s.
Yeah,
you know,
those are good.
some of my aunts all try to out-bunk each other. It's kind of like good comedy, but you know, and always the coffee and the percolator. You know, with the insert.
With the cord with the rope on it.
It's the best. I still love that sound. If I could get that on my phone, I'd go to bed with it, that percolation.
My sister has my grandmother's percolator, and it still works.
You should bust it out. I think you should wear it. I think this weekend you should try that.
Yeah,
make a bundt cake, and then you can write me, tell me how it goes, the experience. So your house is, but I think there's all those things, like as you kind of make everyone's quilts of experience. Like mine was, we had 2 magazines in our house. We had National Geographic, and we had Gourmet Magazine. And we had probably every gourmet from, I don't know, like 65 or so to when I left in the early 80s. And it's funny because we gave them all away, and I'm searching for some old gourmets now because I love that magazine so much. And I think in our world where we're swiping, there was something about that, receiving that magazine monthly. And there was a section there called On the Avenues, which was so well written, and it was really about a walk down, whether it was Park Avenue or Fifth Avenue, or you know, maybe it was the Lower East Side, and it would talk about that experience, and it was so you know, it was so visual and amazing.
There's
and
something
it took
to that.
Places. I remember seeing, you know, the first time I ever saw, you know, lavender from Provence was, you know, on the cover of Gourmet. You know, it's about, you know, I think 1999, one of my great thrills of my life was Ruth Reichel, then at Gourmet, invited me to Gourmet. We did a little story about our kids or whatever, but the thrill was, I'll never forget, there was a photographer named Romulo Yanes, and he shot probably 20 years at least. And I remember when he shot my picture, I was like, to this day, like blown away. Because I saw his name a million fucking times.
Yeah.
Like on there taking pictures, and all of a sudden, like my crappy little pizza, whatever, is gonna be immortalized by this great
huge
photographer. And it's, I remember walking out, getting off the elevator, and they had every gourmet and long, may it rest in peace, but every cover of Gourmet from 46 when it started or whatever to that time to 99. And it was inspiring. I think there was something very powerful to me about that. Like, I wouldn't have understood it when I was in it, but looking back, and you start to see, holy shit, I remember that lobster with the corn in July, August 76. I remember that. My mom made that thing work, and my other great, I think, blessing was when I was a kid, and even today I still have asthma a little bit, but when I was a kid, I was pretty sick.
Yeah.
And it was an incredibly great teacher because it kept me home a lot, and it kept me stuck at home a lot, and I missed a lot of school, but when my mom's at work, she gave me a lot of tasks in the kitchen, defrost this or heat this up, or, and I sit and I looked at those magazines, and I remember there was another TV show, I think it was on Channel 11 back in New York, but it was Graham Kerr, the Galloping Gourmet.
Oh, yeah.
And they were fantastic.
Yeah.
And he was amazing, and I loved that. I remember being a kid. It came out right after the Mike Douglas show.
Right.
And I remember sitting, being a kid, about 3 o'clock, and I just thought it was brilliant. And later on at PBS, had great chefs, and and as I got older and tried to get away, separated from pizza, to be a more legitimate chef. Ironically, I thought that the opportunity really was, well, why can't we do something? Like, I love elevated cuisine, but I also like taking something with great humility and great broad appeal.
Yeah.
Like pizza. It's the most popular food argument in the world.
Right.
It's cut into triangles. It's cut into 8 slices. It's scorable. Fair play, nothing to figure out. Like, it's our first food that we carry away from home. It's our first food we eat behind a dugout, or with our friends, with other people's houses. So I think there's a lot of opportunity to deliver something familiar, and then if anyone gives a shit, you can dive deep into a minutia of what makes good things good, which is my life's work. My life's work is, whether it's a chair, I want the ergonomics to be great. I want the materials to be great. I want to make it have great intention. If it's a tomato, we have a little tomato business, as you know. I'll make sure our farmers, care as much about the earth as we do, and obviously they do, to leave it better than they found it, and be a part of people's pantry. And so I think even like on the tomato side, jumping stories, like all those things, to have a tomato in a can, painted by my father, grown by our friends and farmers. My partner, Rob Dinapolis, is a 3rd generation tomato, a farmer, grower, and packer. His family, they were in San Jose for many years, still are. And all those experiences, I think, lead us to where we are. And also you understand that with all, my life has been very Forrest Gump-like. I've been more blessed than I could ever imagine.
Yeah.
I don't have a lot of material things, but I have, I'm the richest person I know.
Right. When you have that, if I could just backtrack a little bit, I want to go into tomato land. This is a good segue into the tomatoes, but I want to just go back for just a brief second, because you're always talk about how inclusive you are and how you want young people to be moving forward, and you're always looking to improve and always trying to be what makes good things good, and go forward and bring everything into the future. But at the same time, like what you're describing with Gourmet and the lineage, we're also going back. We're also trying to perfect and preserve the classics. Like, that combination to me is really pretty profound.
Well, I've got a theory on that one. It's like, I would say, I say this a lot, and I'll connect the dots on this one too, but I would say today's the best day ever. And I say it because I can take all the yesterdays with me to this point. I don't have to give it. They're already with me. I didn't need to go back I look at every gourmet magazine or every Galpin Gourmet or every grandmother or shoemaker that gave me a recipe, or just Mike's Deli in the Bronx that, showed me how to make mozzarella years ago and
Right.
taught me how to taste it, and, Patel Brothers in New York, where all the tomatoes stacked up, Arthur Avenue, all those smells and sounds and everything. Yeah. They're omnipresent. They're with me. I take them. As I move forward, it's like, it's like as we go forward, there's a little bit like a kind of rolling stone, but like you learn what to throw from the stone and what to carry, what moss to bring on with you,
Right.
And so I think you learn that. It's like I'm constantly, I'm always saying I don't waste any time on being right or wrong. Right. I just like I adapt to that moment. Yeah. Of like, this was a good idea until I put a nail on that wall and I hit a water line. Not a good idea.
But I guess
so we have to adjust from there. But I think.
But with cooking, it seems like it's like what you're saying. It's part of your subconscious, and then you just act on it in the moment. Going forward.
Yeah, I'm just saying that. Yeah, I'm just saying it's everything. Like not to be all feely about it, but I have probably some of the best relationships that I have are people no longer breathing, really some of my like great aunts and uncles, they've become better listeners, and so have I. I think sometimes skin and bones gets in the way. So time, I think, has a tendency or an opportunity, to really to continue teaching.
Right.
And I didn't have to leave those memories behind. I try to see things. Mm-hmm. Like, my father's father, Big Sonny Bianco, who's worked in construction, a crane operator in New York City. Last job he did was the World Trade Center. One of 1,000 people working on the foundation there.
Wow.
But super tough guy, very tough man.
Yeah.
But at the end of his life, he's a pussycat.
Yeah.
And you start to see, thank you guys. You start to see, his own personal struggle.
Right.
Working through the 20s, hanging out in the dock, waiting to get pulled for a job or picked for a job, fighting through it, getting paid with a barrel of beer. You tell me stories about getting paid with a barrel of beer. So you'd sell the beer to make money and whatever.
Yeah.
And you start to see what made people hard or what made people soft or what made people understanding.
Yeah.
I had my Uncle Louis. It's a funny story. My little boy, was named Louis after my dad, but he says like I love you all the time, like a million times. And I had this one uncle, my Uncle Louis, the guy that made the bad wine actually, would say I love you a million times. And he was the only one like in my father's side of the family. My Aunt Philomena too, I'd say that too. But really even say it. We never really talked about it.
Yeah, that generation.
And it's weird, like when he would say it a million times. Like when I saw him as a kid, he pulled me aside and say it. I remember before he passed away, I was probably in my 20s. I was my early 20s. I was working in Santa Fe. I remember him, his friend Romeo, who he grew up with. They took their Buick Electra and drove down from Connecticut, where they lived in Darien, drove down to Florida and drove all the way to New Mexico. Santa Fe was where I was working. Came up and brought this little camera. It was even then out of date, with the flash, like the cubes. Remember those?
Yeah, the flash bulb.
And I remember he wanted to take a picture of me and him. He had his buddy Romeo, and he was so adamant on getting the lighting right because he only had like one flash left on the 4 bulbs. And I remember taking it, and I remember saying like I love you a million times. It's such a
it's so great.
It's funny, like the impact of
I know
of seemingly,
it's crazy, especially as a father now. Like you realize that from those relationships, you think like there's this moment where, okay, now I can tell my child this important thing, or we're going to do this important day. Those things kind of come in and out, but it's just you coming home after work, sitting down, just drinking a glass of water, talking to your wife, those little things, those little moments are the ones that end up being the really big, deeper moments.
I mean, it really is. It's everything right now. Like even, it's kind of crazy. We have my mother-in-law who lived with us, passed away about 2 months ago. She had stage 4 cancer, and her cancer was good, but she got, COVID and went to the hospital, never came out. And it was difficult, obviously difficult for my wife and my kids. My kids were in there every night when she was alive. But I was very grateful at such an early age that they were able to witness the fragility of life, and the cycle of life.
And it all goes into it. It's amazing. I mean, that's what makes a great artist, really. It's the fullness of all of that. And even not even understanding it at the moment. Like I'm sure you have a different perspective now, 30 years in, that you had when you first started in the back of the grocery store making pizzas, right? But it's totally. I mean, there's nothing, there was nothing. I'd love to say I had this grandiose plan, but there really wasn't. It was just, I moved to a new place and I didn't know what to do except what I did. Right.
And, and I started this catering business and out of my apartment. I did a party for this French guy named Guy Coscas. Started a grocery store. He liked what I did. He gave me free space in the corner, which wasn't exactly free, but it was very grateful, and I was very fortunate. And so, like I said, all those things and all those people, I really never have to look back. I mean, I really try to carry them with me. Yes, I try to make, I like to say I'm not superstitious, but I possibly could be, because I do a lot of things. I do a lot of things that, like when my little building downtown, my original building, I usually do it at that one. Sometimes there are other places, but I always look back and consciously think, in case the last time I see you, it was fun, Right. And I just want to be always at peace all the time. So, when there is that day, because someday will be right that we said we left it on the field or on the table, is what we were capable to give. And sometimes, and most times, especially now, it's enough. I don't have enough to help a lot of my employees that I had to lay off. And it's such a fucking, just a beyond humbling, helpless experience,
Yeah, I know.
But
could not have seen this coming.
Yeah.
Of all the problems, right? Of all the things that could have tripped you up.
Yeah. No, I mean, it's and it's ironic, the irony of, like, as we were fighting with our insurance company, that you pay for 30 years and, thank God we didn't burn down or weren't hit by lightning or it wasn't an earthquake in Arizona or anything like that. But the one thing that we could have had some help on was business interruption insurance, which we have. But, luckily for any insurance company, in 2002, after SARS, Congress passed a law that made them exempt from pandemics. And so I'm saying, what could be more fucking interruptive than being interrupted by a pandemic, your business? Like, it's insane. And I talked to one insurance broker wrote me and said, hey, I appreciate your struggle, but, he said, imagine what would happen to insurance companies. I said, well, fucking welcome to the party. Exactly. I can only imagine we're living that reality. And, like, I'm sitting at a table with 4 corners. Yeah. Wouldn't it make more sense if we could all get a corner?
Right.
Instead of saying, I'd love to help you drag that table and my other 3 pals, but with just after that last thing, it was a mess.
Yeah, right. We can't.
You should have been there. My back is still hating. I can't even. Man. But you keep paying that insurance because if something else could come up.
Keep making your bills. All right, so let's go to tomatoes. For the first time ever, my sister runs a small nonprofit in New Jersey. In Clifton, New Jersey. She has this little farm and she grows
Nice.
produce and spreads it throughout Patterson and Passaic and all these different cities. And she's got these old farms and she's reworked them, brought them back to life. So we got all these tomatoes, and we went down to the Jersey Shore, and my nephews and my brother-in-law and sister and my family, we actually cooked down
awesome.
and canned these tomatoes, right? So it really started my brain thinking, like, I mindlessly try and make sauce all the time, and I'm always don't really, again, being thoughtful, don't really put too much thinking into the tomatoes. And what in your mind, now you have this brand, the Bianco di Napoli brand, which by the way was at Gelson's for like a half a second. They were right there next to the Senzo.
They'll be back. They'll be back. They're back now because we just released Harvest.
Okay, good.
We just released this year's Harvest, so they'll be back. Yeah.
So what makes a great canned tomato? And should you go for the whole tomato or should you go for the crushed tomato?
Well, we're gonna dive deep right now. So
all right, good.
We'll put your helmet on, or the air or the scuba gear. Here's the thing about canned tomatoes. You know, when I started out, it was almost like a bad word. You know, like, do you use fresh tomatoes? It was like, well, you know, sheepingly you say, well, no, they're canned, but
yeah.
And you know, as you can see, my language can sometimes be peppered with inappropriate language. This is my kids. The same holds true for tomatoes, where the best is not always the most appropriate for the situation. For instance, like we have fresh tomatoes that we grow, and we get them warm from the sun, and we slice them. Sometimes, you know, if I was eating them, I won't even rinse it off, and you know, and hit it with some Malden salt, and happy days.
Right.
For customers, we always rinse them, for instance, but you know, and they're great eating tomatoes, and they're magical and for caprese.
Right.
But for you know, harvest or you know, tomatoes, it is like a film in that way. It's happening. We got to put it in the can, literally.
Right.
You know. And at the peak of its production, a lot of film references here, no? A lot of peak of its production. And then it's now suspended for you to Netflix and enjoy the film.
Right.
So the thing about what makes a great tomato as a canned product did not necessarily make it great for an eater with caprese, for instance. Right. So what I look for in a tomato product, which is, you know, like in Italy, where you'll see Samarzano varieties, they go very long, you know, in the climate, you'll see that, you know, it's a longer, slow growing period. Where we grow kind of Central Valley and up in Sac Valley, you know, we can deal with some extreme heat. You're dealing with a lot of, you know, these are grown organically, so you're dealing with, spider mites or bottom end rot or sunburn. Right. So we grow them in a way. We want a shorter, squattier tomato with a tough skin, with a very low moisture. They can hold up. There's a good flavor profile from the earth. Like, so from the earth, meaning that, like, for instance, so my partner Rob DiNapoli, third generation in Central California, as a family's a grower and a packer. Canner. But we also partner with 3 different farmers that grow specifically. They're all organic, but like each one might have a different crop rotation, you know, depending on what was last year. Like for instance, like if our tomatoes this year, where they were planted last year was hard red spring wheat, and that was turned in, and that would give the soil, the farmer knows what to give the soil, not only from a nutrient perspective, but it would create a passivity in the soil that would allow the rooting systems to get to the levels of terroir or the earth that nature provided to provide a nutritional aspect. So, got it. So we want to grow things just like in a chair I was talking about, in its utility and its design and its materials. Well, tomato, very similar.
Right.
We want it to be, a red color because that's going to show not only it's traditional, but it carries most of the red is inside the skin. Like 80% of it comes from lycopene, which is all that little thin layer that if you scraped it on the inside of the skin. So there's new technologies, the steam peel, but they get an extreme amount. There's not a lot of waste on that lycopene, so it's more cancer fighting. Those elements are. Also looking at things that are, we want them, if you took them to lab, they nutritionally calc out as high as they could be. They taste good and they are good. So I think even that simplicity of a lot of times in canning in the 70s and 80s, even the 90s, even some today, a lot of like when a salesman, let's just say, would do a cutting for a restaurant, say, hey, look at our tomatoes. It's super firm. It's just like a fresh when you cut it.
Yeah.
Well, they aren't super firm because they're a canned product.
Right.
So they're brought to temperature to pack them and to season them. Yeah. So they're actually kick-started on the process of you now picking up the baton and carrying them over the finish line in your Sunday gravy or in just hand crushing them for pizza. And to answer your second part, what's better? Well, again, in the appropriation of it, we use whole peeled and we also use crushed.
Right.
The crushed that we do, I started doing because when the tomatoes were harvested, you saw that some of the big lorries that come in, the big trailers that come in, some of the ones in the middle or the bottom would break or get slightly crushed or maybe off size. And those ones are delicious. Yeah. So if we crush them, they're already started, we'll be halfway there, not wasting them. And we also use a color that's called a ragger. A ragger it's a kind of a grinding that makes it more of a kind of an irregular kind of cut, more than like you see some like diced tomatoes, which you need to use very firm, almost unripe tomatoes to dice them so they're cubical, which always never seemed real natural to me. So I think they have to taste good, they have to be of good source, and they have to be appropriate. So that's what I look for. That makes sense.
That makes perfect sense. This gives me this is going to be a continued journey, but I know from just picking them up.
All right, let's do it.
So good. And they're delicious. The
other part, the other part about that too is, there was a lot of things where like it was a perfect kind of relationship, which was me being a chef, even though I have a little garden, I grow a little bit, I'm not a farmer. Yeah. But we worked with our farmers. We work with our canner, my partner, and the end user. So at the beginning, the middle, and the end. All parts of the story were covered. So the end user, I could explain as a business owner and as a chef. I knew that they weren't going to be inexpensive, but I wanted to work on the yield. So I knew that some of my challenges on some of the packs, I'd see a lot of water on the top. The viscosity was very thin. So I worked hard on getting the right thickness and the viscosity of the puree that they were packed in. So if you hand crush them, I was able to do, well, it wasn't really difficult math. I was just watching it, but watching that when you crush them, there's a certain amount of water that's released. That mixed with the thicker puree would ultimately leave you with the perfect pizza or pasta, end use to carry on to the sauce. So some thought goes into it. We're trying to make things happen.
Again, being thoughtful about every step of the way. I know we've got to wrap up. We're going to have to do this again when we can sit and actually.
Anytime, I'm easy to find.
And we'll sit.
I don't got much going on actually.
Me neither. We'll sit at a table and drink some wine and get further into it. There's so much more I want to talk about.
Anytime. Yeah, man. Let's do it.
All right,
I
you're
look
the
forward
best.
to it, brother.
Thanks for your time, man.
Thank you, man. Love to you, and stay healthy, stay well.
All right, I'll see you soon.